Bill, good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Rob. Great to be here. Great to have our other co-host back today after trekking the world.
Let's welcome her back. She is Maria Lawrence, an all-star. Good morning, Maria.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Good to be back. Good to be back. I'm still getting my my sleep time adjusted, but
6 hours difference, I think.
Yeah, 6 hours. So
yeah.
It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon now. So ready to almost call it a day.
Spain time.
Spain time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you walked a lot since you came back?
I've walked a little bit, and I want to stay in the zone. So, yeah, one of our guests this morning apparently saw me on Sunday, and I ignored him completely. So
Not unusual when you're in your zone.
Well, I have my headphones in, and I'm trucking along.
Did you have any injuries on this 100-mile trek?
No, it was, and it was 73 miles, 100 kilometers, 73 miles. Thereabouts. Not really. Feet were good, but there was some residual at the end, some, not exhaustion, but definitely tiredness that I felt when I came back.
Do you eat to replace the calories, or did you end up losing weight?
I lost a couple of pounds, but, that comes back pretty quickly when you come back home. So, anyway, because, 10, 12, 14 miles a day is not what you normally
And were there
do.
a lot of hills, or was it mostly level?
No, there were a lot of hills. Definitely. And interestingly, and I think I may have said this to you all last week, the down is as hard as the up, if not even more challenging, because your shins, have that impact. And then there were some some rocky terrain. There was a lot of muck because the week before we were there was a ton of rain. Yeah. So as you're going through sort of my friend called it the rainforest, you had to sort of watch where you stepped and everything. And then we had to go traverse a couple of streams. And I told my friends, I'm drawing the line. If I have to swim, I'm done. But we didn't have to swim, so that was good.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Quite an experience there.
It was.
Let's welcome in our guest on the program. He is the president of the Berkeley County Commission, Eddie Gochenour. Eddie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
He is the vice president of the Berkeley County Commission, Steve Catlett. Mr. Catlett.
I'm tired just listening.
Yeah, 73 miles. That's a lot of walking.
It is.
Right? It's a lot of driving, let alone walking, right? Yeah. Thought of you guys after we did a segment on impact fees with Jefferson County last week. Kara Keys brought in a couple of folks who are very familiar with them, as they've been doing that in Jefferson County government for quite some time. And they mentioned that they had actually met with you, Eddie, and talked about impact fees and how to best implement those in Berkeley County. How did that meeting go from your perspective?
It went extremely well. Chad Weinbrun, our deputy county administrator, is taking the lead on helping getting our ordinance squared away and keeping us on point, trying to keep us on time. We were hoping to be able to get this implemented by July, so we're still working towards that. But just to go and sit with them, they've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and they're very well versed. They're very comfortable with what they're doing, and so why reinvent everything if we can get good solid information from our neighbors? That's what we did, and we're very grateful for their help.
Did you have a better idea how these will work and how to implement them after the meeting?
I did. It's not quite as simple as what you would expect to be. It's very complex, and there are a lot of restrictions on what you can do with those dollars. And but because of our growth, we'll be able to put them to use, and that's our goal, is to be able to take care of some of the growth without having to raise fees or raise taxes, to try and get the growth to help pay for some growth.
They were talking about fees of a bit more than $10,000 per newly constructed building in Jefferson County. Do you anticipate fees of that same nature in Berkeley County, Eddie?
That's what's being proposed. I think our fee structure was about 11.6, somewhere in that neighborhood. I can tell you I have no appetite for that. You don't want to stop the growth. There's a lot of jobs attached to that, but at the same time, you need to be able to capitalize on it somewhat, and I think that's our desire.
If 11.6 is what was recommended and you don't have an appetite for that, what's a better number in your mind?
Honestly, and until I talk to some more people, I've been doing that. I say, hey, where do you think we should be? Of course, some people really take you to the bottom, and some people who are truly anti-growth want to take you $18,000-$20,000. I'm like, no. Yeah, honestly, today I can't give you an answer, and that's the truth. I mean, I'm just not comfortable with that yet.
Do you know what mix, in terms of distribution of those funds, what mix will go to schools, parks, libraries, whatever the earmarks will be?
I don't, because we haven't.
I have that breakdown right here.
Steve, go right ahead.
Well, first of all, Tischler Bice did this work for us, and we met with them, 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Excuse me a sec, Steve. They're the same group that did the work for Jefferson County.
They are,
as well. Yep.
and they've done hundreds of these across the country. And so the maximum we could charge is $11,657 for a single-family dwelling. That's the max. And it's broken down into 5 categories. County administration is one, $1,012. Fire and rescue, $1,415. Law enforcement, $372. Parks and Rec, $1,721. And schools, $7,137. So over half of the max is with schools. And we can't exceed any of those categories.
One other question pertinent to this. There's currently a capacity improvement fee that's in place for water and sewer.
Right.
This will be in addition to the capital improvement fee. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct. And that's, as we work through that, that has to be, considered.
Yeah.
Of how far you go put somebody in the hole when they want to build a home, even if they, contract it themselves, have a contractor come out and build it or build it themselves. But the other thing to take into consideration with the capacity improvement fees, it is truly an advantage for them, because otherwise they'd be drilling a well and putting in a septic system, which is very expensive today as well. So, just trying to make it apples to apples, and so we're being as fair as we can be, but yet take advantage of the growth.
And
Those are, excuse me, Maria, those are your maximum numbers. So if you decide you want to shave that down, do you then have to shave as an equal percentage on those cuts, or you can just arbitrarily shave one down to another number?
Shave any of the 5 down as much as you want, okay?
Yeah.
You just can't exceed that total.
Yeah, now you say you cannot exceed. I do not think there is statute that says this is the limit. This is a recommendation of a company that would suggest this would be the maximum limit. But I don't think there's any legal restriction to that.
But they say that if you exceed that, you could get yourself into some issues, okay?
Is that right,
With the
Steve?
code, that's
Okay.
what they're saying.
That you can't
okay?
support
You
those
can't,
numbers
right.
because of the growth and
it all
how
has
they
to be
do the
on
calculation.
It all has to be geared on new growth, and that's what
New
they've done.
growth.
They've figured it out on new growth over a 10-year period. So
Maria.
well, and without trying to sound stupid, but that's never stopped me before. So this amount is passed on to the developer, who clearly then passes it on to the homeowner, to the buyer, to the builder, the person who purchases the home. So in essence, the fees go to the new folks who are either coming in or constructing if they're moving from another location in the area. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Those dollars will be collected when you apply for your permit.
Got it.
And you pay your permit fees. That's when those dollars will be collected. It's we truly, because it's new, we will get a lot of pushback from it. But at the same time, we feel that we've been falling behind. And this gives us an opportunity, just like for the sheriff's office, for example, when we can expand the sheriff's office personnel, those dollars can be used for their equipment, their vehicle. So that's half of the first year's salary, not salary, but expenses with that deputy. We'll cover the salary, but yet the impact fee will hopefully cover the equipment and the vehicle involved.
So do you expect then the pushback to come from the developer, the Panhandle Homes, the big guys, Dan Ryan, or more from the community at large, or would it be both?
Yeah, I anticipate more pushback from the single person that wants to build a house here, and they've contracted with a contractor to build their home, and now all of a sudden, they have to pay all these fees. I get it, I understand it, and so we just have to be mindful of that. And if there's such a word anymore in Berkeley County of affordable housing, we have to consider that as well.
Eddie, along that subject, and adding an element of complexity, is there any discussion at all of having this as a slide-in fee? In other words, a higher price home would be charged a larger fee than a lower price home?
Is that even legal?
I'm sorry?
Is that even legal?
I don't know.
It's not.
Well,
No.
and then
So one size fits all?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, and you have to really truly look and see where the impact is. Because originally I was hoping to be able to base it off of bedrooms. Look, and I don't care how big your kitchen is or how large your living room is, but the bedrooms is a component. So if you build a 3-bedroom house, it should, in my thought process, it should be this. But if you build a 5-bedroom house with anticipation of filling those 5 bedrooms up, then the figure would be this. But that's not how it's calculated. That's not how it's done. So back to the drawing board.
Yes, Steve.
And the other thing that comes into play, there's 5 categories, and Parks and Rec and schools only are affected by the residential part of this plan, okay? So you can get the impact from just the residential. There's non-residential fees involved with the growth, and county administration, fire and rescue, and law enforcement qualify for that as well.
Is there
in addition to?
Is there a different breakdown for non-residential?
It's broke down on square footage, okay? Yes. That's how it's broken down. So
why is law enforcement less than the other 4?
Because most of that need is manpower, and you can't use it for salaries and benefits.
Yeah, so you're just
And it
basically
can
looking
only
at
be
cars
used
and
for-
equipment.
Good
so,
point. Now, does this apply to homes that are already platted, or all homes under construction now?
It's whoever comes in after the effective date and applies for a permit for a
Okay.
home or a
Okay.
business.
So
Which you
what's under construction is fine.
Anticipate July 1?
We're hoping, yeah.
Okay.
It's
So-
probably going to be August 1 at earliest. is
Steve,
what
you
I'm
mentioned
hearing.
that the non-residential is based on square footage. Why is it okay to base the impact fees for non-residential on square footage, but it's not okay to do it for residential?
That's just the way it's done, Rob. And, obviously, if you build homes, you're going to bring in children. That's going to affect the schools and the need for parks. So, but the square footage thing is the only way to do the non-residential, obviously. If you don't do it on bedrooms, you have to do it on dwellings. So you have single-family dwellings, you have multiple-family dwellings, and the multiple-family dwelling is cheaper than the single-family dwelling as far as the impact.
There's been a migration toward this approach. When we first put the fire fees in, it was one size fits all, and there's no consideration for the size. We realized that was very unfair, so then they started moving to the square footage, and now the fire fees are keyed upon the square footage.
Now, it should be noted that this applies only to new construction. If you're buying a home that's already been built, the impact fees do not apply to that. However, if 10 years from now you buy a home that was purchased after the impact fees went in, you can assume the impact fees are already a part of the price of the house, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Let me say one thing. County administration phased this, okay? How important is this to our county? We have an unfunded mandate of growing our judicial center, increasing the size of our judicial center, and it's going to cost us an estimated $20 million to do that. We're going to have to sell $20 million worth of revenue bonds, which the payment's going to be $1.7 million a year for 30 years, okay? We can use the impact fees to help make that payment and save the taxpayers of Berkeley County that $20 million. That's a big deal for us. It really is. And we're going to have to do this whether we have the money or not, because we're mandated. We just spent $1 million on the old jail to make a courtroom there because we're out of space. So this is going to have to happen soon, and getting this in place is going to be an avenue for us to pay for that. That is huge for us.
Steve, you've added a level confusion on my part. I thought the impact fees had to be used in the area they were collected. In other words, if they were collected in the northern part of the county, they would have to be used in the northern part of the county. But what you're describing now, when they go to the county administrator, they can be used countywide.
Certain phases can be, yeah. And because why do we need more judges and more magistrates and all? Because of the growth of our county. So that impacts the whole county, and that growth is occurring everywhere. But to satisfy that need, we have to build a judicial center, even though it's in Martinsburg, that the fees will be paid throughout the whole county to help pay for that. And it makes sense.
And is that the renovation of the Crawford building?
It is. And that building's about a $15 million project, and then it's going to be $5 million then to convert the judicial center we have, where the magistrates are moving out to courtrooms and all as well. So it's a $20 million project all in all. So
Jefferson County's been using these fees for years, and they have bounced back and forth in terms of the dollar amount. I know this year when they were on, they said they were going to go back up over $10,000 because the amount of money they were giving to the schools was going to be going from a very nominal amount to, I think, $6,700, if I remember that conversation that we had. Do you anticipate swings in this amount of impact fee money? Not in terms of number. Obviously, it's going to swing based on the number of new residents constructed and new office buildings constructed. But I'm talking about the rate, for lack of a better way of putting it, the levy rate that would be associated with these.
Well, I think if we raise the fees too high, then we could end up with less money, because you could slow growth down to the point where you're not going to get as much, okay? Particularly if you include the water and sewer connection. So to keep it moderate, but you can change it from one year to the next, and you can come back. If you're not satisfied, if you start out low and then you want to add to this, as long as you don't exceed the max, then you can do that.
Is there a cap
you're
on
not
how
locked in for any certain other than a year to set these fees.
Are there any percentage caps on how much of a swing you can do year to year, Steve Reddy?
There's not. No. But you have to equalize it in terms of, like, county administration. If you have fees coming from the builders, from the homes, and then non-residential both, then whenever you reduce one or increase one, you have to do that with both categories there, okay? But you don't have to do it within all five together.
And I think that we've identified, services that are absolutely impacted by our growth, and they're all important. They're all very, very important. Every one of these agencies that are outlined between police, fire, EMS, parks, and our judicial, they're all very, very important to us. So,
Who picks those categories?
we did.
So you could have picked any number of categories for this
Sure.
money to be funneled
Yes.
to? Okay.
Yeah. But
And maybe you can't, probably you can't answer this right now, but do you have a projection of how much in a year this would generate? I guess you have to figure out what your magic number is per.
Well, we know that we're building anywhere between 12 and 1,400 new homes a year.
Okay.
So that number's pretty steady. What we don't know yet, at least I don't know. Steve may have a number, but I don't. So, if you just start doing the math, say, look, if this was $4,000 a house, this is about what we would be. And if you say, okay, we're going to do 7,000, this is what so somewhere in that ballpark, But
Each 1,000 homes, if you build 1,200, would bring in $1.2 million, $1,000. So if it's 5,000, you'd bring in $6 million off if 1,200 new homes.
Provided those homes are selling
single-family
at
dwellings and selling. But then also you have the money coming from the non-residential too, and that's the hard part to figure out. How is it going to, develop and come? So it's
and you have to prove whether those dollars are going back into our county. I think those dollars can only be held for a maximum of 5 years. I think that's what I understand. So you just can't hoard that money. You have to push the money back out into our community and be accountable for those dollars.
Frederick County, Maryland, which is where I live, instituted impact fees about 25 years ago. And I remember it happening because the development that I bought in was starting to impact those just after I had bought a home. And I think I don't know what they are now, but I think they started out around $12,000, $14,000.
They're up to 27,000.
They're up to 27 now?
Yeah.
And the
28.
fear at the time was, this is going to harm growth in Frederick County. Kids who are coming out of school won't be able to buy a house in Frederick County. And none of that has come true. While it's more difficult for young people out of school to buy a house, clearly that's the case with all housing, that didn't slow any of the growth in Frederick County. I used to have 500 feet of woods behind my house. Those are pretty much gone now because there's 150 houses back there that came in about 10 years ago. So I think most of the people building a new house in Berkeley County are moving here from somebody else, from somewhere else, and they're moving from someplace else where they already had impact fees.
And where they paid a lot more in taxes than what they're going to pay when they get here.
Right.
Okay, so that's why they're coming.
But you also expect the services.
Services.
I mean, they expect
Yeah.
that we have the services that they are accustomed to. So
You would know because you get the complaints.
we do.
I always joke when, for a brief time, I worked in the school system in Jefferson County in the early 90s. And I can remember I got all the calls from people who were moving into the area, and they would say things like, Steve will appreciate this, tell us about the natatoriums that are at the high schools. And I'm like, what? The swimming complex that each of the high schools have. And I'm kind of like, where are you coming from? You're coming from Loudoun County. And no, we don't have that yet. But, the reason you're coming here is because you don't want to
Same taxes.
pay the same taxes. Yeah.
About 2 minutes left. Go
Well,
ahead,
the
Steve.
park situation, they don't build any more land, right? They don't
Correct.
make it. So if we don't set aside some acreage for future parks in the county, then shame on us. And this impact fee can pay for that, okay? That's a big deal. We need several more 100 acres in North and South Berkeley County preserved for the future. You don't have to develop it right away. If it's 10, 20 years from now, I'll never live to see it. But we need, shame on us if we don't preserve this acreage. And now we have a way to pay for it. This impact fee is going to do that. So it's the right thing to do. We have constituents that would love to see us make it so high it would stop the growth totally.
Oh,
Okay?
I'm sure.
I mean,
sure.
so it's a balancing act.
Bill?
Yeah, the 1% safety tax never got out of the
Committee.
gate today.
It didn't, but it certainly is something that's very much needed, and we will continue to work on that.
Did you think you made some progress?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Senate
And,
25-8 in favor of it, so that's pretty good progress.
That's good, yeah.
So we'll get there eventually.
Minute left. It's yours. What do you want people to know right now?
Well, Steve talked real quick about the
Hey,
lightening up the.
we just had last week the fiber people in. We're going to have fiber optics through all Back Creek Valley probably by the fall of this year. 25 homes are going to have access to fiber optics through Frontier, who's just been bought out by Verizon. We're getting ready to go to bid on the Inwood Park. The people in South Berkeley have been wanting this so bad, and we're going to go to bid here in the next few weeks on Inwood Park. We've got $5.5 million set up to start that park, and we can build about half of it with the initial phase one. We got a lot of good things. We're getting ready to open the 901 Park down in North Berkeley County, and it's just all good stuff that's happening here.
And the park and the internet in the valley, there's been working on for like 3 years. I mean, that's a slow process. Gary and I participated in the identifying the area in Back Creek Valley that was so underserved by internet, and we really identified that during the schools when the schools were shut down.
Let's get you back in here next week, and we'll go into some of this stuff more thoroughly. Can we do that?
Sure.
Maybe we'll do a full hour with you guys next week if you have the schedule. All right.
Sure.
Appreciate it, guys.